Hey guys! This will be all the latest chapters for this series. This is part 2 of What If Naruto Was the Heir of Nazarick. Curiosity may have killed the cat, but it entrapped the Overlord. Pondering his mortality, Ainz decides to make the Jinchuriki, Naruto Uzumaki, the heir of Nazarick. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. This part will cover chapters 4 to 5. Let's start. Chapter 4. Anko Mitarashi had expected a number of things when she woke up. She had expected to feel dirty and violated with the telltale aches and pains in her nether regions to taunt her that she had been taken against her will. She was expecting to feel nauseous and sick to her stomach. And she was fearfully expecting to find herself bleeding in the alleyways she had passed out in, stripped of her clothing, while leaking out foreign body fluids. What she wasn't expecting was to wake up in a soft bed with heavy covers in what appeared to be a luxurious-style bedroom. Sitting up, she checked herself over, surprised to see herself still fully clothed, albeit a little dirty. Slowly, she removed the covers and slid out of bed, cautiously scanned her surroundings. Taking a moment to pat herself down, she was relieved to find that she still had all of her weapons and personal effects on her, and after a more personal inspection, the snake mistress let out a sigh of relief to see that she had not been taken against her will. Now just where the hell am I? She thought to herself. And who was that guy from last night? Blurry images of a young man dressed in a dark purple coat with deep blue eyes burned with restrained power, and 6 whisker marks adorning his cheeks came to the forefront of her mind. Not to mention how firm his chest felt when he had picked her up and cradled her head against him just before she blacked out completely. Piecing together these bits of memories, the snake mistress couldn't help but allow a small blush to dust her cheeks. The sound of the door latch softly clicking broke the snake mistress from her musings and alerted her that someone was entering the room. Out of instinct, Anko produced a single kunai from her pouch and readied it in a defensive position. "Ah, you are awake, I see," the woman states in a polite tone as she enters the room, remaining by the doorway. Either to block her escape, or to make her feel at ease but not entering her personal space, Anko wasn't sure. From what Anko could make out, the woman stood at about 5 foot 8 inches tall, making the woman a good 4 inches taller than herself. Her black hair tied up into a low-cropped bun at the back of her head, with a single bang framing the right side of her face. A pair of thin wired glasses adorning her face, giving the woman a rather seductive instructor appearance. A blue collar-like accessory adorned her neck. The rest of her attire consisted of a traditional maid outfit, with a few notable exceptions. First being a silver pauldron covering her left shoulder, and the second the spiked gauntlets that adorned her wrists. Lastly, there was the girdle that wrapped around her midsection, with 2 armored wings at either side to protect the woman's hips. "Who are you?" Anko found her voice, not relaxing from her defensive stance. "And where the hell am I?" "I am Yuri Alpha, Vice Captain of the Pleiades." The now identified Yuri introduced herself in a calm, welcoming tone, as if she were greeting a guest, which wasn't exactly far off. "And you are within the great halls of the Great Tomb of Nazric." "Great Tomb of Nazric?" The snake mistress repeated the words, her face scrunched in confusion. "Yes," the maid replied. "Naruto-sama brought you here last night after you were attacked." Hearing the name of her rescuer, her eyes narrowed as to where she had heard that name before. Almost as if it was a constant presence in the background wherever she went within the village. Suddenly, her eyes widened as she realized why the name sounded so familiar. Naruto, that was the name of the boy the yondaime sealed the Kyuubi inside 13 years ago. While she had not been in the village at the time of the attack, having been dragged off by her sensei at the time. However, she had heard the ANBU that was assigned to watch over her talking loosely about it, when she was brought back to the village after Orochimaru had abandoned her in Umi no Kuni. At the time, the whispering of the boy did mean anything to then 12-year-old abandoned apprentice. Mostly due to the only stigma that surrounded her being the apprentice of a trader, giving the abandoned prodigy her own issues with the ignorant villagers to deal with. However, now it all made sense as to why she recognized the name. The constant whispering of random civilians and shinobi alike sharing tales with one another of the things that had done, or conspired to do to the boy the next time they caught him. Though most of those whispers ceased around 3 years ago. You may relax, Anko-san, Yuri spoke, breaking the snake mistress out of her musing for a second time, as the maid gestured towards the brandished weapon. While you are a guest of Naruto-sama, you will not come to any harm, so long as you do not provoke any of those that live within these walls. Frowning slightly, Anko slowly relented, placing her kunai back into its pouch. Normally the infamous snake mistress would brazenly defy any such request, but there was an aura about this maid, this woman, that made her think twice of showing such brashness that she was known for. Not to mention the tone Yuri had used, while polite, had an underlying warning of pain and suffering unimaginable if not heeded. Very well, now if you will accompany me, Yuri requested, moving just enough out of the doorway to invite the woman through. Naruto-sama has asked me to escort you to the dining hall for breakfast, and so that you can no doubt talk with one another. However, I will stress that you be respectful when addressing him. All right. Anko nervously gulped as she stepped past the woman into the massive hallway. I will do my best to remember that. At this, Yuri couldn't help but let out a soft giggle at the snake mistress's antics, bringing up her hand to cover her mouth as she did so. Naruto-sama is correct, she mused with a small grin. It is rather entertaining to mess with others. Quietly, the two made their way through the massive corridors with Yuri walking just slightly ahead. Meanwhile, Anko was taking in the sights around her, taking note of the elaborate statues, vases, and various busts that lined the corridor. None of which the snake mistress was able to identify, though it was clear that the figures the statues and busts embodied were held in high regard. As the two continued their trek, it wasn't lost on the snake mistress about the looks she was receiving from the other inhabitants of wherever she was. Anko was no stranger to receiving such looks, but the ones these maids and butlers were sending her felt more like they were looking down on her, as one would look down upon an insect, making her shiver slightly. However, the snake mistress had to do a double take when the pair had walked past a small, stout penguin-like creature barking orders at small number of maids and butlers that were lined up in front of him, all bowed at the waist in a show of respect for the small creature's station above them. That is Eclair. Yuri answered the silent question. He is the assistant butler. But penguin, Anko stammered, trying to process the rather odd scene she had just witnessed, and making a silent vow to ease off the sake for a while. It may come as a surprise to you, the battle maid began. But currently, only Naruto-sama and yourself are the only two humans within the great tomb of Nazric. This bit of information caught Anko by surprise, prompting her to take another quick glance around, noticing how those around herself looked human enough, though now she could see it. It was in their posture, how they walked, and above all, it was in their eyes. How they looked at her as if she were an insignificant insect with restrained hatred and mistrust. So, is that why they all look at me like that? She inquired quietly. In a sense, yes. But don't take it personally, Yuri answered. Those of us that reside within the great tomb of Nazric hold little love for humans. And witnessing how the villagers have treated Naruto-sama, as well as your own incident last night, has not helped to ease our disposition. However, Naruto-sama has encouraged all to not rashly judge all humans. I see, the snake mistress replied before turning silent as she mulled over what she was told. Though she could understand their point of view, opting not to question the existence of species outside of being human, especially when the evidence was staring her in the face. Here we are, Yuri stated, catching Anko's attention as the duo stopped at a large pair of doors. With a smooth movement, the black-haired maid fluidly opened the doors, allowing Anko to get a good view of the massive dining room that was filled with various tables, with one long one in the center of the room, filled with assortment of food of all kinds. At the center of the table sat the young blonde teen that had came to her aid the previous night. Naruto-sama, our guest is awakened. Hearing this, the young blonde had stopped what he was doing and stood from his spot at the table, before seemingly teleporting across the table, prompting the snake mistress to blink in surprise. Thank you very much, Yuri-chan. The whiskered teen smiled as he approached the duo. It was not missed that the maid in question was blushing at his praise. You may return to your duties. Of course, Naruto-sama. Yuri bowed before turning to Anko, and bidding her farewell before disappearing out of the room again. I trust you slept well, Mitarashi-san, Naruto stated as he turned his attention to the purple-haired woman. I hope you were not too seriously hurt last night. Anko blinked for a moment, unsure of how to respond. Since this young teen was the first person, outside of her fellow Ice Queens, that showed any genuine concern for her well-being. I've been through worse. She tried to brush it off, though the young Overlord had caught just the tiniest hint of wetness in her eyes. She hides it well. Urza spoke within the blonde's mind. But she is truly touched by your genuine concern for her. Indeed. Naruto mentally replied. She has the same eyes I once had, before meeting Ainz GG. Forgive my lack of manners. The young Overlord spoke, realizing he was starting to zone out with his short discussion with his tenant. As you no doubt know, I am Naruto Uzumaki, Overlord of the Great Tomb of Nazric. Overlord, that's quite the title to have. The snake mistress quirked a brow. Anyways, as you may or may not know, I am the sexy and single Anko Mitarashi, famed snake mistress of Konoha. Naruto couldn't help but chuckle at the woman's eccentric introduction. A pleasure to meet you, Anko-san. Would you care to join me for breakfast? Naruto offered as he gestured towards the table behind him. Pastonia-chan tends to spoil me for breakfast, and I absolutely cannot finish all that she has prepared. Anko was about to refuse, when her stomach rumbled with hunger as the mouth-watering armor wafted into her nostrils, causing her to unconsciously drool a bit. Quickly wiping the evidence from her mouth, the woman sheepishly smiled. You came to my rescue like a knight in shining armor last night, put me in a room that is far more luxurious than any of the fancy hotels in Konoha, and now you are offering me breakfast. Anko gave a teasing grin, before allowing her voice to drop to a more husky tone. Are you sure you're not trying to butter me up for a special reward? Before the young Overlord could respond to the snake mistress's jest, an explosion of killer intent from 3 separate sources erupted behind the woman, prompting Anko to quickly turn to face the oncoming threat. Only to be greeted by the sight of 3 enraged-looking women. 1 tall and 2 shorter. The taller of the 3, standing at 5'7", was a woman of impeccable beauty with lustrous jet-black hair and the face of a goddess, or a temptress, depending on one's point of view. Dressed in a pure white dress with silky gloves covering her slender hands, and a golden spiderweb necklace that covered her shoulders and chest. Golden irises with vertically split pupils lit up with fury. On her left and right temples, 2 thick horns protruded crookedly, looking like a sort of tiara permanently fixated to her head. At her waist, a pair of black angel-like wings. To the left of the angelic beauty was a shorter woman, only standing 4'7", looking no older than 14 with pale and shiny skin with fine facial features, and seductive-looking crimson-red eyes. Or they would look seductive, if they were not burning with righteous fury. Her silver hair tied up into a ponytail through a large red and purple ribbon on top of it all. Her attire consisted of a soft black Victorian-looking evening dress with a big heavy skirt. Her upper body dressed in a lace-embellished ribbon and a short tailored jacket, though it was clear to the snake mistress that the silver-haired woman was using padding to fill out her chest. A pair of long lace gloves adorned her sleek hands, not exposing any bit of skin, a large contrast to the taller woman. The last of the trio was a tomboyish-looking girl with dark skin and pointed ears, standing at only 4'4". Her golden shoulder-length hair perfectly contrasting with her heterochromia, with her left eye blue while her right eye was green. Both were alit with fury. She wears a reddish-black scale-like armor, covered by a white and gold vest embroidered with the sigil of Nazric. A matching set of white trousers and gold-plated shoes accompanied her outfit, as well as an acorn necklace that emitted a golden light. At her waist was a coiled whip that her hands were itching to grasp. Unconsciously taking a step back from the 3, Anko couldn't help but to break out in a cold sweat by the sheer and unnatural amount of killing intent the 3 were exuding, forcing her to drop to a knee as she began to hyperventilate. Countless visions of her gruesome demise flashing before her eyes at the hands of the 3 before her, ranging from decapitation, dismemberment, and mutilation of her lady parts. Enough! Naruto's voice boomed and echoed throughout the room as he allowed his power to pulse outwards, causing the three monster girls to cease their killer intent and each fall to one knee before him, allowing Anko to take in some much-needed air that she had been deprived of. Anko-san is my guest, and she will be treated as such. But Naruto-sama, Albedo pleaded. The vile words that she insinuated are no different than what the three of you do, the blonde overlord pointed out, focusing on the pure maiden first. Albedo-chan, you are extraordinarily vocal of the things you would do with me in such detail that the pervert frog fucker could write volumes of his trash books based on your words alone. Shalter-chan, he turned his attention to the vampire. You insist on joining me every time I take a bath. And Aura-chan, now focusing on the dark elf girl kneeling before him. You sneak into my bed every night. Each of the three he had singled out had the decency to look embarrassed, suddenly finding the floor much more interesting. Now comparing her minor jest to all of your actions, she hasn't done anything that would warrant this type of reaction. Biba Naruto-sama, she is only human. We can provide you with so much more than this mortal. Albedo countered, looking up at the blonde overlord. Looking down on others now, Albedo-chan? The boy quickly replied with a raised eyebrow. The succubus sputtered. And no. It's just. Listen, okay. Naruto interrupted. I understand how all of you feel about me, and I am honored to have three beautiful ladies such as yourselves feel that way about me. The trio of monster girls couldn't stop the blush that crept onto their faces. Now, whether or not her playful flirting becomes something more in the future remains to be seen. Naruto continued, sending a playful wink towards the snake mistress when he saw she was about to retort with something. And should that happen, I guarantee on my honor that given time, you will grow to like her as a valued friend, and perhaps even a sister. Why is that, Naruto-sama? Aura inquired, adopting a curious expression. Because she has the same eyes I had before all of you came into my life. The Overlord responded quietly. Silence hung over the four of them as they realized the weight of his words. Albedo was the first to stand up and turn to the snake mistress and give a short bow at the waist. I would like to offer our apologies for our actions towards you, Mitarashi-san. The succubus spoke, her voice holding an air of seriousness to it, prompting the other two girls to follow her example in a rare occurrence of the three of them not fighting amongst each other. Anko blinked a few times, realizing she was being put on the spot right now. Hey, no skin off my back, she replied, albeit a little nervously. I can't blame you for defending your claim, the Gaki is handsome. However, as soon as the words left her mouth, she felt a small chill run down her spine and wondered if she had said the wrong thing, without meaning to, since it just came out of her mouth. However, to her surprise, the one named Albedo merely stood straight and smiled at her. On that we can agree on. She spoke. Naruto-sama is quite handsome. Come ladies, Albedo instructed, turning her attention to her fellow rivals. Let us return to our duties, and leave Naruto-sama to entertain his guest. Bowing once more towards the snake mistress in apology, the three departed the room, closing the massive doors behind them. I do apologize for their actions, Anko-san, Naruto said, turning his attention towards the purple-haired woman. The three of them tend to get overzealous when it comes to me. So, in other words, they're fangirls. Anko teased, feeling a bit more at ease after the whiskered overlord had come to her defense. Like that Uchiha brat. Yeah, except his fangirls are more worried about their looks, what to wear, and if they will break a nail. The blonde shrugged. Mine will level an entire village in my honor. No arguments there. So hungry? Naruto inquired. With a small chuckle, the snake mistress accepted the invitation, blushing slightly when the whiskered overlord insisted on pulling out a chair for her and pushing it in. After sampling a few of the dishes, she had to admit that the food served was better than anything she had had before. Even her sacred dango couldn't compare. And you get to eat this every day? Anko inquired. Pretty much. Naruto nodded. We'll even have a lunch delivered to me at the academy, made fresh. Damn, must be nice. She muttered to herself, though just loud enough for the whiskered blonde to hear her. What, Dango, every day not good enough for you? He teased, earning a playful glare from the snake mistress. Tell you what, I will have someone drop some lunch off for you too, every day. How about that? I couldn't possibly. Relax, Anko-san. I insist, he interrupted her with a smile. Besides, what kind of friend would I be if I let you starve? All right. You win. Anko smiled, having a feeling that the whiskered teen could be as stubborn and as hard-headed as she was when she set her mind to something. Though as a comfortable silence fell over them, one thing was bugging the snake mistress. What did you mean, that I had eyes like yours? She asked, looking to her host. Exactly that. Naruto replied after a few seconds of silence. When I look in your eyes, I see myself a few years ago. You are lonely and desperate for reliable companionship. To be acknowledged as yourself, and not live in the shadows of the sins of others. You have those you consider friends, but you keep them at arm's length, unsure if they are worthy of your trust. Your boisterous personality, and don't give a fuck attitude is a front you put up to scare people away so you don't get hurt again. Similar to my mask of being an idiotic prankster. In you, I see a kindred spirit. Anko didn't know how to respond to how painfully accurate the whiskered blonde had described her. Slowly tears began to form in her eyes, feeling completely exposed and vulnerable before the young teen as she broke down and began to cry. However, she was snapped out of her stupor as she felt a pair of arms wrap around her racking body. I didn't tell you this to expose you and leave you bare before me. Naruto whispered into her ear as he comforted her in a hug. I told you this, because I know how it feels firsthand to be alone. For the first 8 years of my life, I had barely anyone, and those I did have couldn't watch over me all the time. At the age of 7, the orphanage the old man trusted to look after me kicked me to the streets, leaving me vulnerable for the villagers looking to get their pound of flesh for the Kyuubi attack. To them, I was never Naruto Uzumaki. He continued, his hand rubbing her back gently. To the mindless masses, I was just a Kyuubi in human form, powerless and unable to defend myself against the mobs that formed. While the old man passed laws to protect me, there was little he could actually do to ensure they were followed, especially when some of his own trusted ANB would allow such things to happen under their watch. Only stepping in to prevent actual death, and even then, they would take their time getting me to the hospital. Damn Gaki, Anko sniffled slightly, composing herself as she wiped the tears from her face. Slowly peeling herself from the blonde's arms, albeit reluctantly, but she had a reputation to uphold. Why the hell would you stay in the village after all that? While few in number, there are people here I care about. Naruto replied as he leaned back in his chair. The old man, Ayam-chan and her father, Samdano, and now you. Anko couldn't help but smile at that, because she knew that he had meant every word he said. The years she had toiled in the torture and interrogation branch of Konoha under Ibiki had her well versed in reading one's body language and tone to gauge if a person was sincere or not. A sense of joy, a mostly foreign feeling for the famed snake mistress, swelled up inside her, that she had at least one more who saw her as Anko, and not the traitor's apprentice. However, she was quickly reminded just why the feeling of joy was a foreign sensation for her, as a burning pain flared up at the base of her neck, where her shoulder and neck met, causing her to lurch forward and groan in pain as she grasped at the spot where the curse mark was located. Anko-san? Naruto asked, his voice full of concern as he immediately leaned forward to support her. Seeing her hand clasped firmly over the base of her neck, he gently moved her hand away so he could get a clear look at what was afflicting her, allowing her to grasp his own hand to stave off the pain she was in. That bastard Orochimaru Puputha is on me, BF before he abandoned me. Anko grunted out through the pain, squeezing the blonde's hand as hard as she could, though the blonde showed no reaction to her grip. Instead he was focused on the curse mark. Scan. Naruto called out the spell as his eyes began to glow with a blue radiance, allowing him to see the inner workings of the seal. It appears the snake has implanted a small piece of his soul into the curse mark. Urza observed, growling slightly. So it appears. Naruto frowned, but allowed a smirk to visit his lips. However, this just made it easier to deal with. But for now, let's do this. Dispelling the skin spell he had used, Naruto channeled his magic into a 4th-tier seal evil spell to isolate and restrain the soul fragment, giving the snake mistress a much-needed reprieve as her breathing began to steady. "Well, what did you do?" she asked, catching her breath. "I scanned the mark and was able to identify why it was afflicting you so," Naruto explained as he casually opened up a small portal in front of her and reached in to pull out a small, purple-colored gem of some kind. "Turns out, the bastard injected part of his soul into the mark, and from what I was able to determine, it feeds off of negative emotions. So, when you feel anything joyful or happy, it responds aggressively." "Fucking figures," Anko spat, cursing her traitorous former sensei. "Always fucking up my life." "The good news is that I can remove it," the blonde simply stated. "Soul mark and all." Hearing this, Anko froze and looked over towards the blonde teen. "How?" she ventured to ask, not wanting to get her hopes up. "I've tried almost everything to get rid of that damnable thing, even completely slicing it from my neck, but it just kept coming back. Even approached that fucking pervert, only to get told that he would only look at it after I had slept with him." Naruto scowled upon hearing this, but shook it off for the time being, making a silent vow to make that perverted bastard pay down the road, when his sorry excuse of a godfather would try and enter his life in order to manipulate the prophecy that was supposedly around him. Oh yes, he was well aware of the vague prophecy the perverted Sannin was obsessed with. The one that stated he would shape the shinobi world in his image. "Now you're going to feel a small burning sensation, but it will be significantly less than it was before," he explained, receiving a nod in confirmation from the snake mistress. Bringing the purple gem closer towards the woman's neck, it began to glow and pulse with energy. Soul Trap Naruto cast the spell, causing Anko to hiss as a burning sensation came from the place where her curse mark was. Though true to the whiskered blonde's words, the pain was far less than it had been earlier, making it far more bearable. And then, there was nothing. Pulling back, Anko could see that the once purple crystal-like gem was now a sickly black color. "Is that?" "Yes," the blonde answered before she could finish. "This is the snake bastard's soul, or rather, the part that was within you." Tentatively reaching up, the snake mistress rubbed the spot where the curse mark once was, surprised to find her skin completely smooth and unmarred. No raised marks, indentations, or scarring. Just smooth, unblemished skin. "It's gone," she whispered. "It's actually gone." Tears of happiness pooling in her eyes as she launched forward and embraced the whiskered teen in a firm hug, inadvertently smashing his head between her mounds of flesh on her chest. All while repeating her thanks in hushed whispers. "I swear, for freeing me from that bastard's mark, I am yours," Anko vowed. "You want someone killed, I'll do it. You want someone to disappear, I'll do it, no questions asked. Hell, if you want to knock me up and use me as a sex slave, I will give myself to you. How about you just be my friend?" Naruto offered as he gently removed himself from her arms, hiding the blush that was creeping up on his face due to where it was just seconds ago. "And hey, if it becomes something more later, all the better, right?" "Friends, I like that." The snake mistress smiled, a rare, genuine smile. "Unfortunately, we have to cut this short. I have to get to the academy, and I trust you have your own duties to attend to," Naruto informed the snake mistress, noting the time. "How about dinner tonight?" "Are you inviting me to a date, Naruto-kun?" Anko grinned, her teasing nature coming back. After all, she did have a reputation to uphold, regardless if the whiskered teen before her had laid her bare and exposed. "Well, I was merely being polite and extending an invitation to get to know my newfound friend. But I would be remiss if I were to turn down a date with such a beautiful woman as yourself, so a date it is then, Anko-chan," Naruto responded fluidly with a foxy grin. Damn gaki, able to match me at my own game. She couldn't help but think. Wordlessly, Naruto moved his hand in a circular motion, opening a portal in front of the two that showed an empty alleyway. Though from the trash bins, the snake mistress could see that it was the one that was located directly behind the ramen stand. "Shall we?" he asked, gesturing towards the portal. Taking the hint, Anko stepped through the portal unsure of what to expect. only to find her immediately in the alleyway she had just seen. Turning around, she saw her newfound friend stepping through as well before the portal closed behind him. Normally, I would teleport to my apartment I am supposed to be staying in, but I figured it would look suspicious and lead to some rather unwanted rumors to circulate if we were seen leaving at the same time. Naruto explained. Not like I don't have enough of those kinds of rumors going around about me, anyways. Anko grumbled, though thankful for the young overlord's consideration for her dignity. At any rate, this is where we part ways for now. Naruto stated, It was a pleasure to meet you and I am looking forward to our date this evening. Yeah? Anko chuckled. Just don't get all sappy with the flowers, chocolate, and music and shit. Chuckling to himself, Naruto departed the alleyway and disappeared down the road towards the academy, leaving the snake mistress behind to tend to her own duties. Shaking her head, Anko couldn't help but smile. Not even a full day with the whiskered teen, and he has already done more for her than the entire collective of the village combined. And the only thing he had asked for in return was companionship. True, an honest companionship with no ulterior motives. A kindred spirit, as he had called her. Friends, huh? She mused to herself. Maybe something more in the future. With a slight skip in her step, the snake mistress stepped out onto the main road and proceeded to make her way towards her place of work. She was in such a good mood that the usual glares and whispers behind her back she typically received daily couldn't even dampen her spirits. Hell, Orochimaru himself could appear in front of her, and she would merely laugh at him and continue on her way. Anko! A voice called out from behind her, prompting the snake mistress to turn around, only to be greeted by the sight of two of her fellow ice queens swiftly making their way towards her in the form of Hana Inuzuka and Kurenai Yuhi. Shit! Anko mentally cursed, not really looking forward to the questions she was about to be asked, especially regarding the events that had happened the night prior, and where she had disappeared to. While Naruto had not outright said it, it was clear to her that the whiskered teen wanted to keep Nazrick a secret. Hey girls. Anko nervously greeted the two once they reached her, earning a glare from each of them in response. Academy? Naruto let out a bored sigh as he leaned back in his assigned seat and pulled out a tome full of high-tiered spells that he had borrowed from Nazarick's library as he waited for the class to officially start, casting a subtle illusion spell over it to make it look like a run-of-the-mill textbook. Just in case someone got too curious for their own good and attempted to read of his shoulder, not that they would be able to understand any of the gibberish that was scrawled on the pages, since it was written in runes rather than words. Slowly, the rest of the class began to filter into the classroom and take their assigned seats. Only a scant few sending a glare his way, most of which were among the Uchiha fangirls and random civilian boys who were looking to impress the aforementioned girls. As for the rest of the class that comprised of more notable civilian families, such as Sakura Haruno, the daughter of one of the civilian council members that oversaw the village's economical flow, and clan heirs. While she was one of the more vocal of the Uchiha fangirls, Sakura had managed to balance her love obsession with her studies, allowing her to float around the top of the class in academics, and was a sure candidate for Kunoichi of the year come graduation, despite her civilian heritage. While she had initially butted heads with the whiskered overlord, trying to fit in with the rest of the civilian kids by attempting and horribly failing at bullying the young blonde, the two had come to a silent agreement to just let one another be. Next was the clan heirs. Hinata Hyuga, Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Naura, Choji Akimichi, Shino Aburame, Kiba Inuzuka, and Sasuke Uchiha. Ironically enough, the only one Naruto had any issues with was the Inuzuka heir with his constant claim of being the alpha male of the class and trying to flirt and assert his male dominance over his female classmates. One of his primary targets was the Hyuga heir, Hinata. Normally, she was a reserved girl and as shy as a wallflower, but on more than one occasion had the teenage girl laid the Inuzuka heir out with precise and painful juken strikes. It also didn't help that Sam's youngest pup, as she called him, felt intimidated by the overlord's mere presence and acted brash to hide his insecurity. There had been one instance when Kiba tried to intimidate Naruto in a staring contest and had attempted to headbutt him, only to render himself unconscious when the Uzumaki's head didn't even budge. As for the Nara, Akimichi, and Aburame heirs, they were mostly neutral when it came to the blonde. Never really going out of their way to interact with him, while at the same time, not taking part in any of the shenanigans that the more foolish of the class would engage in when it came to him. For Shikamaru, it was too troublesome. Choji was steadfast at his best friend's side, which mostly consisted of laying down and watching the clouds with the Nara. Whereas Shino was an introvert, choosing on to speak when spoken to. Ironically, the two he got along with the most were the Yamanka and Uchiha heirs. With Ino, a rival for the Uchiha with her best friend Sakura, the two would engage in deep discussions about psychology, mental ailments and treatments, as well as practical chakra theory. It also wasn't a surprise that the Yamanka heiress was in direct competition with Sakura for the Kunoichi of the Year achievement. While he didn't consider her a precious person just yet, she was at least a valued classmate and future comrade. Maybe a friend in the future. Lastly, was the Uchiha himself. Currently, Sasuke and his mother, Mikoto, were the only two surviving Uchiha within the village after their clan was massacred 4 years ago by Sasuke's older brother, Itachi. Supposedly to test his own strength, if the official story was to be believed. However, Naruto had his suspicions that there was more to it than what was officially stated. Mainly because there were too many holes in the cover story, and it appeared that Sasuke had similar thoughts, since his primary goal was to chase down his older brother and get the truth from him. As for the Uchiha himself, he mostly viewed the blonde as a rival to test his skills against. Being one of the few students that wasn't afraid to engage in a full-contact spar with the Uchiha. Though what Sasuke was unaware of was just how much Naruto was holding back in their spars, nor the illusion spells he would cast on himself to fake damage done. Their rivalry of sorts was the primary reason the civilian fangirls hated him, since he dared to be as strong as their beloved Sasuke. If only they knew. After a couple more minutes, one of the instructors finally entered the room, sending a mild glare towards the whiskered teen before taking his place before the class. While the glare was nothing new, since Naruto was well aware of the fact that the man blamed him for his parents' death, the fact that he was alone was. Usually he had a partner that would aid in the class's instruction. It was then that he realized that one of the men that had attempted to rape Anko the night prior was none other than the silver-haired instructor. I thought he looked familiar. The whiskered overlord mused with a slight grin, remembering the man's face contorting in pain when the blonde had crushed the would-be rapist's heart. Looks like he abandoned his idea to ambush you at your apartment, and instead went to have some other fun. Urza added with a slight growl, as her thoughts were similar to Naruto's when it came to rapists. Iruka-sensei, where is Mizuki-sensei? A purple-haired civilian girl asked Ami if the blonde recalled her name correctly. Is he sick? Unfortunately, Mizuki-sensei was found dead this morning. The now identified Iruka informed the class, earning a series of gasps of shock. An investigation is being launched to find the demon who murdered him. It wasn't lost on the young overlord that even with no evidence, the man was blaming him for his partner's death. Though at least this time, he would correct. Not that it mattered, since the investigation would turn up nothing that would point to him. If anything, they would find incriminating evidence to condemn the bastards. I wonder what Anko-chan is doing right now, he mused, as he tuned out the starting lectures. Oh, so it's Anko-chan already, huh? The QB teased. You've bonded with her quickly. Like I said, she's a kindred spirit. Dango stand? Said Snake Mistress sneezed as her two friends were interrogating her about what had happened the previous night. Fortunately, Ibiki had given her the day off, due to being light on those requiring to be cracked open. Since dead men couldn't scream and spill secrets. Great, now who the hell is thinking of me? Anko groaned. So, let me get this straight. Kurenai phrased, as she was trying to picture what her friend had told her. Mizuki had somehow managed to spike your drink with something, and then lead you to an alleyway where two of his friends were waiting and then attempted to rape you. And then someone came and killed them and took you to his place after you passed out. To the Genjutsu mistress, it made no sense. She had known the silver-haired man for years and had gone on several missions with him before he became an instructor at the academy, and had trusted him with her life. But to hear someone she considered a trusted friend accused of such a crime, but another friend made her feel conflicted. That's what happened. The snake mistress shrugged, taking a bite out of her dango, though compared to the earlier breakfast she had, it paled in comparison. It's not that I don't believe you. Kurenai sighed. It's just that I find it hard to believe. Mizuki-sen was a trusted comrade that I went on countless missions outside the village with. Someone I could trust to watch my back. Believe me, or don't believe me. Anko sighed, dropping the now empty stick. No skin off my back. Kurenai frowned at the dismissive nature of her friend. And are you sure your rescuer, she emphasized the word, didn't have anything to do with your attack, and framed Mizuki-san? Immediately the ruby-eyed woman realized that this was the wrong thing to say as killer intent leaked out from the snake mistress, and a raging fury burned like a wildfire within her brown, pupilless eyes as she leveled a glare at the genjutsu mistress. Don't. Anko hissed dangerously. Don't you even dare consider making that pathetic wannabe rapist a victim. As far as I am concerned, that bastard got what he deserved. Pushing off the bar stool aggressively, she tossed some money on the countertop to pay for her meal and stormed out of the stand, leaving behind a gobsmacked Kurenai. Meanwhile, Hana was sniffing the air curiously, trying to identify the familiar scent she smelled wafting off of the snake mistress. Her eyes flickering as she tried to identify the scent, so far coming up with a complete blank. Mentally racking her brain as to just where she had caught that scent from before. Why? She mentally asked herself. Why in the name of Kami does that smell so familiar? Chapter 5. 1.5 months later. Shadows danced across the large room in the overnight hours while everyone in the fire daimyo's palace slept, minus the guards that patrolled the halls and grounds. The large room illuminated by the fire crackling from the fireplace located behind an overly sized wooden desk and chair. Soft giggling elicited from the large chair as two short legs swung to and fro. In the rather oversized chair, compared to her petite frame, a 9-year-old girl sat, reading over the various scrolls that littered the large desk before casting it into the fire. Another political marriage proposal. The girl scoffed. How foolish of them to think I would just accept any man. This was Renner Chardilan Rao Vazelf, formerly known as Tomoko Kaneda, the fire daimyo's daughter and his golden princess, as the man had affectionately nicknamed her. She had long gold hair that draped over her shoulders and cascaded down her back, stopping just above her waistline, silky smooth and supple. Her vibrant dark blue eyes shone like sapphires in the dancing light, filled with a gentle warmth. Though if one were to look closely, they would be able to see the fires of malicious mischief hidden behind those sapphire pools. As to why she now referred to herself as Renner, instead of her given name at birth, was due to an unfortunate incident that transpired 5 years ago, when she was only 4 years old. It had started out as only a minor headache that had served little more than an irritation. However, as the weeks passed, the headaches grew worse and more severe, almost as if something were trying to break free from her skull. Weeks had turned into months as the headaches continued. It had grown so severe that it would render the poor child unconscious, causing no small amount of grief for her parents, who had every medical professional in the capital and all of Hai no Kuni examine their daughter, only to come up empty-handed each time. This had continued for nearly 2 months before she slipped into a coma that had lasted 4 months. The fire daimyo's religious advisors had speculated that a demon, or an evil spirit, was attempting to possess the girl and voiced their concerns to the Fire Lord, urging the man to have his daughter exorcised and warded before the spirit could succeed in taking over the young girl. However, the man would hear none of it, waving off their concerns as paranoid superstition. And so it was, when she finally woke from her coma, the soul of Tomoko Kaneda was no more. The witch of the fallen kingdom had taken her place, unknown to the unfortunate girl's parents, whom were too ecstatic to see their baby girl awake and healthy once more to question any of the changes in the girl's personality and mannerisms. Disregarding the implications of their daughter's new name, simply waving it off as something children do. If only my pet didn't betray me. She snarled before casting yet another marriage proposal into the fire, violently in anger at the memory. She had just completed the final requirements for the ritual to send both her and her beloved pet through time and space to follow Lord Ainz. Only for her to be stabbed in the back, literally, by Climb. Hence why it had taken her so long for her spirit to arrive in this new world, and then finding that her chosen reincarnation was already occupied by another soul. Something she had set out to correct immediately upon her awakening. After all I had done for the ungrateful mongrel, taking him in off the streets, giving him clothing, shelter, and affection, she seethed. And how does he repay me? By turning his back on me and running off with that tavern whore. Ignoring the scrolls for the time being, she took the time to compose herself once more, closing her eyes and taking in deep breaths to allow her anger to fade away. As she opened her eyes once more, she stole a glance at the clock near the desk and frowned. It was nearing 4 in the morning. Within the hour, her father would be up. Letting out a small sigh, she began to organize the scrolls back how they were, so as to leave no evidence that she had been in here. However, she froze when her eyes fell upon one particular scroll that bared a familiar sigil. It can't be, she thought as she carefully broke open the wax seal and unrolled the scroll, her eyes widening as she read its contents. Lord Yoshiyuki Kaneda, I am writing to you on behalf of the Nazric clan, currently residing within the great village of Konoha, in request to officially establish our clan within the great nation of Hai no Kuni post haste. As a clan, we have resided within the walls of Konoha for a number of years, decades even, and feel that it is time we firmly place our roots and have a place to call home once again, after wandering the lands aimlessly for so long. Our clan is old, ancient even, and as such we hold a massive amount of wealth, some of which we have used to purchase a large compound within the village and unique capabilities that would be of benefit for the defense and overall betterment of not only Konoha, but Hai no Kuni as a whole. Unfortunately, I am unable to divulge the full extent of our capabilities. I am sure you understand a clan's desire to protect its secrets. No doubt you are curious as to why we have sent this request directly to you instead of the Hokage and his esteemed council. The truth is, with the exception of the Hokage and sparse members, the council has a biased view of sorts with our chosen clan heir. An orphan boy, known as Naruto Uzumaki, the Nazerick clan head had saw potential in and had taken under his wing, as well as groomed him to be a fine clan head in the future. As you can imagine, we would prefer to avoid such unnecessary spectacle and would rather have our request presented before an unbiased audience for consideration. We eagerly await your correspondence. Signed, Demiurge Jaldabaoth, acting clan head. Renner read over the request once more, then again to ensure she had not missed anything. She was elated to see that Nazric had indeed arrived within this world, decades ahead of her it would seem, but she was also confused as the scroll made no mention of Lord Ainz, which concerned her greatly. She reasoned that he could be keeping himself hidden for the time being and having Demiurge acting in his stead. However, if this were part of one of his machinations, he would have assumed the identity of a wandering warrior, or in this world a shinobi, to get a feel for the layout of the land and to build up his reputation like he had done before. However, she had heard no tales of a wandering shinobi, swordsman nor warrior that had caught her interest to indicate they were Lord Ainz in disguise. Frowning slightly, she gazed at the clan heir's name, Naruto Uzumaki. She had seen the boy's name brought up before in other documents in her father's office, full name being Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. He was the sole child of the now-deceased Yondaime Hokage, Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, the former ANBU commander, code-named Kamenu, as well as the previous Jinchuriki of the Kyubi no Yoko. A burden that had regretfully been passed down to their son. With this information alone, she knew that this boy was not Lord Ainz. However, the letter strongly implied that Lord Ainz himself had saw potential in the boy and had essentially named him his successor. For what reason, she didn't know, but she knew who did. Coming to a decision, she forged her father's signature and stamped its approval, making the Nazric clan establishment official before rolling the scroll up neatly, and carefully reapplying the wax seal before setting it in the pile of approved scrolls. Quickly, she cleaned up the desk and departed the room, leaving no trace of her prescience. Now, all she needed to do is manipulate her father into either making an official trip to Konoha with her, or at least allowing her and her mother to travel there. Either way, she would meet with this Naruto Uzumaki and find out what had happened to Lord Ainz's old gown. Konoha, 2 weeks later. Anko Mitarashi couldn't help but feel a tinge of giddiness as the minutes ticked by, eager to meet up with the young overlord once more. Over the last 2 months it had become a common occurrence for the snake mistress to enjoy the company of the whiskered blonde, oftentimes blowing off hanging out with her fellow ice queens in favor of spending time with the teenage Uzumaki within the confines of the great tomb of Nazrick. It wasn't that she no longer enjoyed their company, it was simply that Naruto actually understood her on a deeper level. There were no looks of pity she would occasionally receive from both Kurenai and Hana when they would gather together, nor the sidelong glances Yugao would subtly send her way. No, when she was alone with Naruto she could allow her defenses to fall and just be herself. Not the disgraced apprentice of Orochimaru of the Sannin, not the sadistic psycho bitch that loved to torture people, not even the infamous snake mistress of Konoha. Just Anko Mitarashi the woman. The young overlord had also made good on his promise to ensure she got a delectable lunch every day, much to the surprise of her fellow ice queens when they saw her eating something other than dango, even sparking some jealousy when the three of them had caught a whiff of the tantalizing aroma coming from the snake mistress's meal. Anko still didn't know how he did it, considering the whiskered blonde would be attending the academy at the time, but the meal would be ready and waiting for her at her apartment by the time her lunchtime would roll around. "You look like you're in a good mood," came a teasing voice from her left, prompting the snake mistress to turn her attention towards the source, seeing the form of Hana Inuzuka and her 3 canine partners making her way towards her with Kurenai not far behind her. Normally Yugao would be with them, but the young ANBU was currently on the clock, as it were. "With food as good as this, how can I not be in a good mood?" Anko grinned as the 2 women took their seats next to her, each shooting her an envious glare. "So," the Inuzuka woman began, "you ever going to introduce us to this mystery man of yours?" Anko gave a mock-thinking gesture before shaking her head, a grin on her face. "Nah, think I am going to be selfish and keep him all to myself," Anko said as she stuck out her tongue at Hana. "What, afraid we might steal him from you?" The feral young woman smirked. "Nah," the snake mistress dismissed her friend's jest. "More worried that Nai-chan will scare him away." "Hey!" the Genjutsu mistress exclaimed. "You have a point there." Hana relented with a teasing smile, earning herself a glare from the ruby-eyed woman. "Oh relax, you know she's right Kurenai-chan, you go into big sister mode whenever a guy approaches any of us. You haven't exactly had the best track records when it's come to men, you know." Kurenai could only wince at the jab at her current track record. After Mizuki's murder, an investigation was launched to discover the culprit. However, in a surprising turn of events, ANBU had discovered damning evidence against the deceased Chunin when they investigated the man's apartment. Hidden in a secure cache, just behind the man's bed, were several stacks of papers and journals detailing the man's dealing with the notorious trader, Orochimaru, monetary transactions between himself and the snake Sannin, meeting points and more. The journals themselves gave detailed accounts of the man's personal targets. Various women that resided within the village, some of which had mysteriously vanished months ago with no trace. It was evident as to what had happened to them, when compared to the transactions made between the 2 men. They had been sold to Orochimaru for a fate worse than death. Among the man's targets were none other than the Genjutsu mistress, whom was his primary target, as well as the other ice queens. As it happened to be, Kurenai had been the man's initial target the night Anko was nearly raped, which had left the Genjutsu mistress feeling extremely guilty that she had unknowingly put her friend, almost sister figure, in danger simply because she trusted the man. There was no doubt in Kurenai's mind that if the roles had been reversed, and she stayed alone with Mizuki, he would have succeeded that night, leaving her broken and defiled. Unlike Anko, she didn't have the high resistance to drugs like the snake mistress did. Which begged the question. If she had been the victim, would the one who rescued Anko have arrived in time to save her? Would the act have even happened in the same location? Speaking of men, Anko disrupted the ruby-eyed woman's train of thoughts. "How are things going between you and Asuma? Last I heard you were thinking of taking it to the next level." Kurenai could only groan at the question. As if her track record wasn't bad enough. In between trying to hook up Hana with Kakashi Hatake, due to him holding the dog's summoning contract and the feral woman's partnership with canines, A perfect match, one would think. It had been a disaster. Upon their meeting, Hataki had the audacity to inquire about just how close the bond between an Inuzuka and their canine partner was, claiming he had heard rumors. It had not helped matters any, when he had implied that Hana herself must be insatiable due to have 3 partners instead of just one like most Inuzuka clan members. When she had confronted him about his remarks, the man had merely played it off that he was only joking to lighten the mood. Then there was the debacle when she had tried to play matchmaker between Anko and Irika. The date, if one could call it that, had lasted all of 5 minutes as the Chunin instructor couldn't stop staring at the snake mistress's breast, which had irritated the woman to no end. After a few misguided comments, the date had ended with the Chunin on the floor with a rather large lump on his head and an extremely pissed-off Anko Mitarashi. Suppose I really shouldn't be surprised by now, Kurenai sighed as she lay her head on the countertop, lamenting her current track record with men. Bastard was sleeping around on me with some whore in the red light district. Damn. Anko sighed, reaching over and giving her friend a comforting rub on the back. It really did seem the poor woman couldn't catch a break when it came to men. You know, Nai-chan. Perhaps men aren't your thing. Hana allowed a mischievous grin to spread across her face. Maybe you should start looking for a good woman or 2 instead, since you have a better track record with them. Didn't think you swung that way, Hana-chan. Kurenai mumbled from the countertop, giving the feral woman a critical eye. What? The Inuzuka smirked. You didn't think men are the only targets of seduction missions, did you? Anko couldn't help but to snicker at her friend's expense, noticing the embarrassed expression on the genjutsu mistress's face. Though there was a degree of truth in what Hana had said, seduction missions didn't just focus on men, but women as well, and both kunoichi and shinobi had to be able to play both sides of the field as required, depending on their target's sexual preference. Granted, she had never been assigned any herself, with the elder council members of the village preferring to keep her within the walls of the village for security reasons. Paranoid bastards. I won't lie, Hana continued. I have never let any of my male targets cross the line with me, but there have been more than a few steamy nights with my female targets. Looking over, she could see Kurenai's face doing a perfect impression of a tomato, ready to burst. Turning her attention to the snake mistress, she watched as Anko checked the time before packing away the leftovers of her lunch and getting up to leave. As much as I would love to stay and chat, ladies, I got a date. Anko grinned before taking to the roofs and disappearing out of sight, leaving behind a still slightly flustered Kurenai and an amused Hana. She's going to see her mystery guy again, Hana commented with a snicker. I just wish she would introduce us to him already, or at least tell us anything about him. Kurenai groaned in frustration. I hate that it feels like she ditches us to go hang out with this guy, whoever he is. Relax, Nai-chan. The brunette woman advised her friend. The fact that Anko-chan feels secure enough to be alone with this guy for hours on end, every day, should say something, especially after what happened 2 months ago. Kurenai involuntarily flinched in guilt. Enough of that, Kurenai Yuhi. Hana chastised, seeing her friend's reaction. You had no idea what the bastard intended to do that night. So stop blaming yourself. I know, the ruby-eyed woman sighed. It's just that. No, the feral woman interrupted. It's as you said. You knew him for years and went on missions with him. There is no feasible way you could have known his intentions, no matter how you look at it. You're right. Kurenai replied after a handful of seconds. She still felt guilty, but Hana was right. She had no reason to doubt Mizuki's intentions when he had offered to walk Anko home that night. Think I may put my name in as a Jonin sensei this year. Seeing her friend was attempting to change the subject, Hana nodded in acknowledgement. Hokage-sama has given me the rest of the week off, Hana replied before frowning slightly. Starting next week, I get to take Mizuki's place as the assistant instructor alongside Irika. While she had nothing against helping instruct the next generation of shinobi and kunoichi, she wasn't looking forward to working alongside Irika. Aside from the man's failed date with Anko, his overall personality just rubbed the Inuzuka the wrong way. The way he carried himself just felt false, as if he were projecting what he wanted others to see him as, rather than himself. Not to mention her younger brother Kiba had complained about the man showing preferential treatment to various students, namely the female students in the class, all while preaching about not playing favorites. Of course, he had also complained about how a blonde-haired kid by the name of Naruto Uzumaki had embarrassed him in front of the entire class, though he never said how the boy had embarrassed him, leaving her to doubt his words and believe that he more than likely made a fool of himself. "Think you can do me a favor and keep an eye on Hinata-chan for me?" Kurenai inquired, as she viewed the usually shy Hyuga as something of an adopted little sister of sorts. "Sure," Hana shrugged. "Mom already asked me to look out for a young man by the name of Naruto Uzumaki anyways." "Any particular reason why?" "I can't give the details, but suffice to say that my mother considers him family." She explained the best she could without breaking any laws surrounding the blonde-haired teenager. "I never got to meet him personally, but from what my mother said, he's a good kid that got dealt a shitty hand in life." Kurenai merely nodded, accepting the answer. One thing she had learned while being friends with the young Inuzuka woman was that when her mother was not a woman to be questioned. If Pharaoh clan had said someone was a good person, then they were a good person. No ifs, ands, or buts. Simple as that. Which made the Genjutsu mistress want to kick herself in the butt for waving off Tsum's warning about Asuma. Being a good man and a good mate are two completely different things. The Inuzuka matriarch had told her. A commotion down the street broke the two women out of their conversation, prompting both to get up and see what was going on. As they neared the main road where the commotion was coming from, they could make out a contingent of samurai as well as the daimyo's own 12 guardian ninja escorting an ornate carriage being drawn by two beautiful pure white horses towards the Hokage's building. "What's Lord Yoshiyuki doing here?" Kurenai ventured to ask, since the man would rarely leave the capital unless it was for a diplomatic excursion or to tend to more pressing matters. "Can't say, but it looks like his daughter is with him," Hana commented as she spied the luscious golden locks of the 9-year-old girl sitting alongside her father in the carriage. "So maybe this is more of a random social visit." "Maybe." The ruby-eyed woman nodded. "Guess we'll find out later if it concerns us." "True." The pharaoh woman grinned. "Bet the civilian side of the council is shitting themselves right now, though." After all, nothing made various members of the council more nervous than when the reigning lord over the very land their home resided in made unannounced visits, as it usually didn't bode well for their own personal ventures. Hokage's office. Hiruzen Sarutobi sat behind his large wooden desk, strumming his fingers across the surface as he tried to rack his brain as to why the fire daimyo would be visiting the village this day unannounced. Behind him were his 4 ANBU guards that would normally be hidden throughout the room. However, with the visitation of the daimyo, it was a courtesy that all guards be visible in the room while the Fire Lord was present. This was mostly done as a gesture of trust, to show that the village leader had nothing to hide. The elder man didn't have to wait long before a soft knock at the door indicated his guests had arrived. With a quick invitation, both large doors were fully opened, allowing for 4 of the daimyo's personal guard to enter ahead of the Fire Lord and his daughter. "Lord Yoshiyuki," Hiruzen greeted with a small bow at the waist. "What a pleasant surprise for you to visit us today." "Hiruzen, my old friend," the Fire Lord greeted in return with a soft smile. "I apologize for coming unannounced, but my little golden princess was rather insistent that I oversee this personally." "Oversee what exactly, if you don't mind me asking?" the Sandaime inquired, clearly confused. "I understand your confusion, my old friend. 2 weeks ago, a scroll was delivered to my desk requesting the founding of a new clan within the village," the daimyo explained as he took his seat in front of Hiruzen's desk, prompting the village leader to do the same. "The Nazric clan, as they are called." "I am afraid I have not heard of this clan," Hiruzen admitted with a hint of embarrassment, as the man prided himself of being knowledgeable of every clan that resided within the village, no matter how large or small. "Though I am curious as to why they would have sent the request to you rather than myself. Apparently, there are members of your council that hold a biased view of the clan's chosen heir," Yoshiyuki stated with a sigh. "A young man by the name of Naruto Uzumaki." Hearing this, Hiruzen's eyes widened in shock, as did various members of his personal ANBU, none more so than the cat-masked ANBU, as she had watched over the young teen throughout the years. Partially out of her own sense of duty, but mostly to honor her sensei's memory and look after her son in her place. Throughout the years of her watching over him, she never witnessed anything that would stand out of this mysterious clan approaching him. Though she surmised that it was possible they could have approached him when she was unable to watch over the whiskered youth. Hiruzen, on the other hand, was going over countless scenarios within his mind of the implications this held. Was this mysterious Nazric clan a threat, an ally, or something else? Not to mention the fact that they had taken an interest in young Naruto. Again, he wasn't sure if it was a mere coincidence that they had approached the boy or if they were aware of just what the boy held and desired to use the power of the demon fox for their own gain. He also briefly pondered if this was the reason the young Uzumaki had stopped visiting him over the years. I suppose it would be prudent to meet with this Nazric clan, Hiruzen stated after a handful of seconds, if only to sate his own curiosity and assess their motives. Nico, if you would be so kind as to retrieve Naruto Uzumaki and bring him here, I believe he should still be in the academy. Wordlessly, the lone female ANBU departed the room in a swirl of leaves to carry out her orders. Not even a full minute later there was a knock at the door, prompting the elder village leader to look at the door in a questioning manner. Forgive me, Hokage Dano. Yoshiyuki spoke up, seeing the expression on his friend's face. I took the initiative to send a few of my personnel to the clan's compound to invite the acting clan head to join us for this meeting upon my arrival. Turning to his own guard, he motioned for them to allow the individual entry into the room. Without question, two moved to either side of the door and opened them wide, exposing a rather lanky figure, standing just shy of 6 feet tall, dressed in a rather elegant-looking 3-piece red dinner suit, consisting of an overcoat, slacks, and a simple red necktie, accompanied by a white dress shirt and a pair of black gloves and dress shoes. A pair of dark silver-tinted glasses obscuring his eyes. Off to the side, Renner silently gasped as she took in the sight of the Demon Emperor and floor guardian of the 7th floor of the Great Tomb of Nazric. If there had been any doubt in her mind prior, it was snuffed out now. Demiurge's prescience confirmed that Nazric was here, within this village. Now, she needed to discover what happened to Lord Ainz and why this Naruto Uzumaki was named the Lich's heir. Greetings, Your Grace. The tall man greeted the Fire Lord first, giving a deep bow before turning to greet the others of note within the room. Lord Hokage and of course, Milady. Demiurge Jaldabaoth, acting head of the Nazric clan at your service. You said you are the acting clan head? Renner ventured to ask, deciding that she could no doubt get the answer to one of her questions simply out of childlike curiosity. What does that mean? Regrettably, our beloved clan head passed on 3 years ago. Demiurge smiled sadly, earning a frown from the blonde-haired girl. Unfortunately, our clan heir is still too young to officially take over the clan. As such, I have been asked to oversee the day-to-day operations of the clan until such time young Naruto can officially take the mantle. If I may inquire, Hiruzen interjected. Just how did you come to meet young Naruto Uzumaki? An understandable question, Lord Hokage. The demon gave a friendly smile. I am sure it is odd that a clan not only taken an outsider, but named them clan heir. The elder village leader merely nodded. I admit that I am curious as to what led to this myself. The Fire Lord added, alongside an eager nod from the man's daughter. Very well. The lanky man smiled, taking a seat in the second chair in front of the desk while Renner made herself comfortable on the 2-person couch that was located near the wall across from the desk. It must have been 5 years ago now, give or take a few months. Ainz-sama had decided to take a peaceful stroll through the village to familiarize himself with the place he wanted to call home. Demiurge began the well-rehearsed story as to how they met Naruto. As it were, he ventured a bit too close to the location you know of as the Forest of Death, the northern quarter to be exact if I remember correctly. Those in the room that were familiar with that particular stretch of forest paled when they had heard that a presumed civilian had wandered too close to it, let alone that particular section of the forest. Even the Chunin exams were warded off towards the more southern section of the forest to prevent any unnecessary deaths in an already deadly exam. In fact, there was only one person in all of Konoha that dared to enter that part willingly, and that was none other than Anko Mitarashi, the resident snake mistress. It is unclear how, but Ainz-sama was beset upon by a pack of feral canines, perhaps wolves, injuring him severely. The dark-haired demon continued with his tale. It was then that a young boy in ragged clothing and a dirt-filled face had answered his screams for help, rushing in and throwing rocks towards the beasts. Demiurge paused for a moment, chuckling. He had unfortunately even hit Ainz-sama in the head with one of the rocks, giving him a rather sizable lump. After the boy had ran out of rocks, he proceeded to pick up a stick and began swinging it wildly, chasing the beasts off. He paused to feel the atmosphere of the room, seeing that he had each of them entranced with his tale. It was some time after that night that Ainz-sama took young Naruto under his wing. Having no children of his own, Ainz-sama saw the potential in the boy and began to tutor young Naruto in clan politics and etiquette. I see. Hiruzen finally spoke, feeling a sense of pride in his surrogate grandson's actions. The compound really seemed to brighten up whenever Naruto would come over. Every single resident took to him rather quickly. Between his infectious smile, warm personality, and of course, his legendary pranks. Demiurge gave a sly smile. Pranks? Renner inquired. Young Naruto Uzumaki has a rather unusual penchant for setting up elaborate pranks against various victims of the village that has done him wrong. The elder Hokage explained with a slight chuckle. I have officially listed them as training exercises as in many cases, they expose weaknesses in our own security. Bubble bath shampoo in the hot springs, exploding confetti hidden within the markets, laxatives in the local bakery, and his pinnacle of pranks, painting the Hokage monument bright orange in the middle of the day. The lanky acting clan head listed off a number of the Uzumaki's most infamous pranks. Hearing this, both the Fire Lord and his daughter gave a small chuckle as they could only imagine the panic that would ensue after each of these pranks. For his part, Yoshiyuki could see how these pranks could be used for practical exercises. Imagining that the bubble bath and laxatives could be replaced with various poisons, the confetti acting as explosives, and the painting of the large monument honoring the past Hokages could be replaced with explosive tags, which if detonated, could cause untold amount of destruction and death to the village below. However, all that stopped with Ainz-sama's passing. Demiurge sighed sadly. While no disrespect to you Hokage-sama, young Naruto saw Ainz-sama as a grandfather figure. And as such, he was greatly affected by his passing, turning his attention towards the other residents within the Nazric compound to ensure their care. A solemn atmosphere fell over those in the room, Renner included, though for different reasons than the rest of the occupants. If what the Archdevil had said was true, then Lord Ainz had passed away and bestowed his legacy to this boy. Academy? The young Overlord was waiting. He had known of the arrival of the Fire Daimyo and his entourage as soon as they had entered the village, kind of hard not to with the commotion his unannounced arrival had caused. Now it was just a matter of time before he would be summoned. He was prepared though, having already issued his instructions to those necessary to gather at the compound he had purchased not long ago, albeit under another name of course. In an ironic twist, the very compound they had bought was none other than the Uzumaki clan compound where his parents had once intended to live as a happy family. Of course, the only reason they were able to purchase the property was due to a real estate law that stated abandoned complexes and compounds could be put on the market if they were abandoned for 10 years or more, something the Sandaime had failed to realize when keeping the boy's heritage a secret from everyone. Naruto had his reasons for pursuing the purchase. First and foremost, it was his by birthright, and while the old man may have had good intentions, it left the property open to being bought up by others. Something he couldn't allow. So waiting until the old man deemed he was ready for his inheritance was not an option. As it were, there were other parties already interested in the property that Naruto had dispatched Seabass and a few of the others to convince them to back out, leaving him to be the sole interested party. Aside from his own personal interest in his parents' compound, it also served as a sort of neutral area for him to invite others that he did not deem trustworthy enough to know of the existence of the great tomb of Nazarick, and so far only one had earned his trust to be granted such an honor, Anko Mitarashi. Not to mention, the now named Nazric compound gave them an official presence within the village itself and a more accessible place for the snake mistress to meet him at before they would depart towards the great tomb. A groan of discomfort broke his musing and turned his attention to his fellow classmate and rival/friend of sorts, Sasuke Uchiha, whom was tenderly rubbing his abdominal area. "You all right?" Naruto quietly asked, so as not to gain the ire of the sole instructor. Not that he cared about the scarred Chunin, but the less attention he garnered the better for the time being. Though with the arrival of the Fire Lord, he was no doubt going to acquire a lot of attention. "Yeah." The Uchiha dismissed his rival/friend's concern. "Something Ka-san put in my lunch just isn't agreeing with me is all." It was a clear lie, but the whiskered overlord conceded to the Uchiha's wish and left him be. "I see," came Irika's voice from the front of the class, prompting both to turn their attention towards the front of the room, seeing a Nico masked Daimyo standing next to Irika. "Naruto Uzumaki, I don't know what you did this time, but you've been summoned by Hokage-sama." Hearing this, coupled with the implications that the scarred Chunin had implied, many of the students began to whisper amongst themselves as to what the whiskered blonde could have done to be pulled from class and called before the Hokage. "You would do well to remember that there are many reasons one is called before Hokage-sama, Irika Umino," Nico sternly reminded, leveling the man with a glare behind her mask, causing him to tense up on the spot. "Not just for disciplinary reasons." "All right." The scarred Chunin stammered in embarrassment due to being called out in front of the entire class. "Uzumaki, get moving." Naruto could only grin as he gathered his sparse belongings and approached the Nico masked Daimyo so that she could escort him to the old man's office. A moment later, the two of them were gone in a swirl of leaves. Hokage's office. "Hokage-sama, he is here." Nico's voice broke the occupants of the room from their thoughts as she stood to the side to present the whiskered teenage overlord. Renner observed the young blonde with a critical eye as he entered the room, taking of note nearly everything appointed heir. First and foremost, she noticed his raw power, despite it being severely restrained, as well as how his outfit resembled that of what Lord Ainz would wear, albeit slimmed down and not as gaudy as the elder Lich's attire. She then drew her attention towards his face, taking note of the 3 whisker marks that adorned each cheek, making him admittedly cute. His eyes, however, while kind and warm at a glance, held back a hint of malicious mischief behind those cerulean spheres. Something she herself found rather appealing. A glint from the sunlight had brought her attention towards the 7 rings he wore upon his fingers, each perfectly sized for his digits, located in the exact same placement Lord Ainz had used. This, accompanied by the sheer power the young teen exuded, and how he carried himself, told her that something big had happened with Lord Ainz. While she didn't believe the story that Demiurge weaved, she did know there were bits of truth expertly weaved into it. Lord Ainz did appoint this boy to be his heir, for whatever reason, and the residents of Nazric did respect him, if the tone of the devil's voice was anything to go by. "You summoned me, Hokage-sama?" Naruto questioned respectfully, foregoing his usual greeting to the elder man due to the company present. "Yes, thank you for coming, Naruto-kun," Hiruzen greeted as he took in the sight of the blonde teen for the first time in a few years, as sad as it was to admit, all the while cursing the mortal enemy of all Kage's paperwork. "I must admit I am surprised to hear that you were chosen to become the heir of an up-and-coming clan. Is there any particular reason you didn't tell me?" While the elderly man hid it well, Naruto could hear the hurt tone in his voice. "I apologize for not informing you, Hokage-sama." Naruto started, giving an apologetic look to the old man. "But as you know, key figures on the council whom hold a lot of influence don't necessarily take kindly to me and would no doubt block or even sabotage any attempt to establish the Nazric clan if I had gone through the local channels." With a frown, Hiruzen nodded his head. Ever since the boy's status was leaked out 13 years ago, numerous members of the civilian side of the council would call for the boy's execution, banishment, and imprisonment, all for the security of the village. It didn't matter how many times he had the problematic civilians removed, others would simply take their place. It had been no secret that Danzo had wanted the boy to train. Though Hiruzen knew full well that by train, the bandaged warhawk would strip the boy of his emotions and everything that made him human and mold the boy into a loyal weapon, only to him. Of course his former teammates, Hamura Midokado and Koharu Yutane, more often than not would back Danzo's policies. However, they were little more than pawns in Danzo's game, and Sarutobi was sure that once the two no longer proved useful, the Warhawk would have them removed. The only side of the council he didn't have a problem with was the Shinobi Council, consisting of all the current clan heads. With the exception of the now deceased Fugaku, now replaced with his more level-headed widowed wife, the majority of the clan heads were rather neutral towards the boy. While Tsum and Mikoto both looked after the boy when they could. Regardless of what the council says, Yoshiyuki spoke as he stood up from his chair to turn towards the blonde teen. The request for the establishment of Clan Nazric has been approved by my courts, so they have no say in the matter. I thank you, Lord Yoshiyuki, Naruto replied with a bow. We will still need to announce this to the council. Hiruzen spoke up as he stood up behind his desk, signaling one of his ANBU to call a council meeting. However, as Lord Yoshiyuki has stated, they will have no say in the matter. Very well, the Uzumaki nodded. With your permission, Your Grace, shall we? Yes, it would be best to get this out of the way. The Fire Lord nodded in agreement. And if it would not be too much trouble, could you perhaps give us a tour of your compound after our business with the council has been concluded? Of course, we would be happy to. Demiurge voiced, standing from his own chair and following the Fire Lord out of the room towards where the meeting would soon take place while the others filed out and followed behind, Renner falling into step alongside the Uzumaki. Compound? Hiruzen questioned, looking between the black-haired devil and the blonde overlord. Ah yes, in order to prepare we purchased an abandoned compound lot located near the Uchiha district. Demiurge replied with a smile as he saw the realization wash over the elder village leader's face. That compound belonged to? He stammered, flickering his gaze towards the blonde Uzumaki. My parents, yes. Naruto answered with a knowing smile. Well, more so my mother than my father, but all the same. How? How did I know? The Uzumaki finished the question hanging upon the old man's lips. While you may have promised my father not to reveal who my parents were until it was determined that I was ready, the furball was under no such obligations. Urza raged within the teen's mind. Who are you calling a furball, you hairless monkey? Sorry, Urza-chan. The young overlord mentally replied. But we can't have the old man know what kind of relationship we have just yet. Oh, a relationship, huh? The vixen grinned in a teasing fashion. Not now. Naruto groaned within his mind, before turning his attention back to the gaping old man whom had almost stumbled mid-step. We had come to a sort of mutual agreement, the blonde explained, seeing the concerned look on Hiruzen's face. In exchange for giving it access to my senses, that being sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell, it would answer any questions I had about my parents as well as give me limited access to its chakra. And when did you make this agreement? The elder village leader ventured to ask. About 5 years ago, shortly before I met Ainz Gigi. Not a complete lie. Hiruzen only nodded, feeling a sense of failure on his part to protect the boy, since 5 years ago would have been that horrible night he had been chased by a mob of drunken civilians and severely beaten, all for something he had no control over. But the compound would have been yours in a few years by birthright. The Sandaime shifted the topic. Why spend money to buy it now? I know. The whiskered teen nodded. However, if I had waited, it would have been too late. Did you know that the compound was already on the market to be sold? How? The words got stuck in his throat, before he groaned in realization. The Housing Reclamation Act. Indeed. Demiurge nodded. Hence why it was imperative that we moved as quickly as we did. No telling what others would have done with the belongings of Naruto-sama's parents. With a tired sigh, Hiruzen nodded in agreement before turning his attention towards the large wooden doors of the council room. Taking another deep breath to prepare himself for the oncoming headache, he turned towards the blonde overlord. Naruto-kun, stay out here until you are called, please, he requested. I'll keep him company, Daddy, Renner exclaimed while bouncing on her feet, earning a chuckle from her father. Very well, Princess, Yoshiyuki stated before turning to his old friend. Shall we? With a final nod, everyone minus Naruto and Renner entered the already filled council chambers, leaving the two blondes alone. Once the two were alone, Naruto turned towards the girl. You're not just the daimyo's daughter, are you? It was a statement, rather than a question. No, considering your given name of Renner, I can only assume that you are a reincarnation of Renner the Chardilan Rauve's elf, otherwise known as the Golden Princess, or your personal favorite, the Witch of the Fallen Kingdom. How do you know this? Renner demanded. This was stuff only Lord Ainz would know about her, and those loyal to him. What did you do to Ainz-sama? You are familiar with the events surrounding the night of my birth, yes? Renner nodded in confirmation. Unfortunately, Ainz GG had gotten too close when he came out to investigate what was happened and got trapped in the seal within alongside the Kyuubi. Naruto sighed. Seeing as there was no escape from the seal, considering it was created by the Shinigami himself, Ainz resolved to instruct me to take up his mantle and care for the great tomb of Nazric. It was 3 years ago that his time finally came to an end in front of all the floor guardians within Nazric. He continued as a lone tear fell from his eye. I promised him I would carry on his memory and take care of those within Nazric. Silence hung between the two for a handful of seconds before the young blonde girl turned and looked Naruto in the eyes. So what is your plan for the future? She asked. My plans? A malicious grin spread across his face. I plan to bring the entire elemental nations under my banner and resurrect the Sorcerer Kingdom, albeit under a different name. I see. Renner grinned, matching his own, which was rather unsettling coming from a 9-year-old girl. Then you will need some political connections. Why, Lady Renner, I do believe that this will be the start of a lovely partnership. I fully agree, Lord Naruto, she replied, giving the whiskered blonde the same title she referred to Ainz by. Shortly after, the doors of the council chambers opened, inviting the two in. Unknown to all present, the establishment of the Nazric clan was just the first of many moves the young Uzumaki would make to begin his conquest of the elemental nations. First to establish his influence within his home village, and now with the partnership of the Fire Lord's daughter, he was guaranteed to have pull within the Fire capital itself when the time came. Yes, a new era for the shinobi nations would be ushered in, either through diplomacy or blood and conquest. It mattered not, all would fall under the banner of Ion no Tikoku. That's it for part 1. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.